Kia ora, everyone, and welcome to 2024. This is our first episode of Techbytes at the end the first week in February. It's great to be here, back with you again, and talking to a wide range of digital leaders, and I'm really excited about our first one this year. Good to talk to you again, Saba. I mean, you're an incredibly busy and can I call you young entrepreneur? And maybe we'll talk about that later. Now that some of our listeners will know you. You've been part of Flint, our leadership group in Auckland, several years ago now. You've spoken at least at one of our conferences. I was trying to think how many, but I didn't go back and count, but that's okay. Which means you've packed a lot in from what you've done over the last little while. But would you mind introducing yourself a little, including what you're doing at the moment, and maybe just give us an example of some of the things you're involved in outside of that?
Sure. So, kia ora, everyone. Thank you, Craig, for having me. Very excited to be here. Start of 2024 too. So, wishing everybody who's watching or listening to this a great year ahead. In terms of introducing myself, yes, I'm Saba Samiei. I am the founder and CEO of two AI startups. One is Macso Technologies. The other one's Comfort.ai. And what do we do? So at Macso, what we're doing is creating a platform that basically makes intelligence portable and allows different sensors to act intelligently. So we can dive into basically what that means and what are the use cases. And with Comfort AI, I mainly do education. And sometimes I help investors doing due diligence on AI startups that they want to invest in from a technical perspective. Outside of that, what do I do? Not much. These two companies are my babies. They take up a lot of time. So yeah, outside of this, I might do some, I don't know, cooking or reading books and just the usual stuff. No exciting activity.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, look, I know you well. You've got quite a journey to get to this point, and so maybe you could tell us a little bit about where you've come from, and then a little bit about the key skills you've learned along the way and experiences you've had on your journey.
Sure. So, I don't know how far back to go. But just so everybody knows my background, originally I'm from Iran. I left Iran with my family when I was 17. I went to India. I lived in India for about 6 years. And then I moved to New Zealand in 2012 as a student doing a postgrad diploma in computing. And then I was hired by IBM, where I did a lot of basically infrastructure work, sorry, project management work for one of their clients. And then I was hired by that client, which is Westpac. So we did a lot of infrastructure work and then a transformation. And then I went into cybersecurity and then Microsoft. And then I basically quit the corporate world and I started my own company. In terms of skill sets, it's very wide range of skill sets. So obviously technical was one of the core skill sets for what I'm doing. Especially in terms of like giving the companies that I have a direction, managing engineering teams, and had it not been working alongside those engineering teams, now managing a team would have been very, very challenging. The other set of skill sets, mainly soft skills, resilience was one of them. Getting used to making mistakes and failing and learning from that, and then standing up on my feet and just continuing was another. And then also really kind of learning who I am, what I believe in, and then believing in myself as well. And my vision. And I've always had a passion for things that leave a big impact in the world. And I think for me, discovering artificial intelligence that gave me that plus the technical satisfaction was a game changer. So yeah, that's my background and the skill sets in my journey.
It's a pretty interesting journey, and if anyone gets to talk to you about that, it's fascinating, and just all that background. And you talked about, you became aware of this thing called AI, and I know you, and it was way before the rise of Chat GPT, which was all last year's technology. But can you tell us a little bit more about why you're so passionate and you got involved in that specific field of technology?
Sure. Um, it basically, yeah, goes back to the point I just mentioned, which is I've always wanted to do something that lasts beyond my lifetime. And that started with me wanting to get everybody out of Earth because I knew our sun was going to die pretty soon when I was 8. Um, and yeah, just seeing everyone's reaction and laughing at me. And interesting thing, I didn't give up on that idea. But I kind of went through like a really long journey of like understanding what sort of skill sets I need. I wanted to become an astrophysicist as a kid, and there is a whole story about how that did not happen, but my passion for astrophysics kind of continued. And as I was reading a great book called The Grand Design by late Dr. Stephen Hawking, I fell in love with his ideas and his theories. And then I came across his warnings about artificial intelligence. And I had heard a little bit, about robotics, and I'm a computer science graduate, but back then AI wasn't as big as it is today, so it wasn't like something that everybody talked about. But that point when I started like reading about Stephen Hawking's warnings about AI, I then started researching what that means. And then, funnily enough, I went and watched a movie called Transcendence, that Johnny Depp movie. And it came out of the cinema, and I decided to go back to university and like really get stuck into artificial intelligence, mainly the ethics aspect of it and the importance of it and the impact it has in the world. And that master's degree was basically what kind of enabled me to really dive deep into artificial intelligence. And then I absolutely fell in love with it. Wouldn't go back, wouldn't change it for anything else.
Cool. Hey, so that's your passion. Obviously, we can hear it. And you kind of followed that passion in a more normal corporate career. I mean, you were lastly at Microsoft, and look where they are now with Copilot, etc. But what was it that led you to leaving that sort of trajectory and stepping out to start your own business?
Yeah. I am a kind of person that sometimes going towards often gets called crazy. And and I think I love when I hear that from people. I see it as a compliment. For me, that's because I like breaking boundaries. Um, as one of my supervisors in my master's degree mentioned, learn the rules like a master so you can break them like an artist. And I really love that. But the corporate world is good, but I think for me it didn't allow me to be as creative as I wanted. A lot of the ideas that I came up with either had to go through a very long approval process or would have been very disruptive to the business because it was an already set up business with a strategy, with a direction. And so I kind of felt like in all of my jobs that I started with like a great challenge in the beginning of the career when I joined that company, and then I would go up and up and then it plateaus. And I thought, well, what else can I do that would continuously give me that challenging environment and also enables me to kind of bring some of these ideas into reality? And I realized that the only way to do that was to start a company, pitch that idea to people who would want to join me on this journey, whether they are investors or employees of Macso. And then yeah, basically take a risk and see what happens. So yeah, that's why.
Yeah, cool. Hey, look, it's not a topic of conversation today. I don't want to go into it, but it'd be interesting to have a chat to you at some stage about, and maybe we'll do it in a different environment around, how you did get funding, because I know that you can't do these things without money, and you can't do it really well unless you get a decent chunk of money and people supporting you. So we'll talk about that another time. But because I wanted to pick up a comment on your LinkedIn profile, it's quoted and you say, "I want to make artificial intelligence everyone's comfort zone." It's a really interesting way. And you've called one of your startups Comfort AI. So what does it actually mean to you? And what values of yours like have driven that perspective that you have?
Yeah, I think so. That mainly came from my master's research. My research was about why is artificial intelligence talked about or perceived as a dangerous technology. And I knew there was a lot more to it than the Terminator movies, or iRobot and all these kind of sci-fis. Um, and one of the things that I came across was that there is a lack of knowledge, in-depth knowledge about artificial intelligence, while it's making its way quite quickly into our everyday lives. And one of the core values that I have is I love sharing, whether that's sharing knowledge, sharing about my culture, sharing my food. I've always loved that because I feel like the more you share, the more you have. I think it's usually people feel like if they start giving things away, it takes things away from them. But for me, it's the other way around. I feel like I have more because now I have more people around me with that, same level of knowledge or enjoyment. And so, and then also one of the dangers that I discovered as part of why is AI perceived or talked about as a dangerous technology is that lack of knowledge. Now, that could be an end user using an AI product. It could be an investor investing in AI companies, or it could be big corporates adopting certain AI tools. And a lot of that comes from, a marketing hype, whether it's a stunt, um, and particularly outside of the tech or digitally native companies, anything in like the primary industry, whether it's manufacturing, ag tech, anything outside of, technology. I saw that danger and I thought, well, you know what? I'm going to start somewhere, and hopefully other people will start picking things up as well. And I know there are other companies that do AI education, and it makes me super, super happy to see that. And yeah, I hope that I can educate as many people as I can through both companies.
Cool. That's so cool. All right. Hey, I want to come back to your journey because I think it's fascinating. But I do, and I know that you want to be known for your achievements, and quite rightfully so. You should be known for that. But we do know, and we've talked about this before, women are underrepresented across all areas of tech, and particularly in leadership roles. I mean, and you're the CEO of a startup company. So can you talk a little bit about how you found that journey to being a CEO of a well-funded startup as a young non-Pākehā female?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, and I do get asked that a lot. Um, the reality is for me, like the answer I have to questions that include any sort of labels is the only way I can tell you how different my journey would have been, how much more difficult or how much easier it would have been, is if I relived the exact same journey as a privileged or white male, right? The typical, stereotypes. But I can't do that. So I can't tell you if it would have been easier, and I can't tell you if it would have been more difficult. What I can tell you is that I have noticed that regardless of what your difference is, when you are different in an environment, you do get a different treatment, right? I started doing a lot of, social volunteering work since I was very young, since I was 13. And I ended up being the youngest of many groups and many initiatives that I did. And then when I moved to New Zealand, a lot of times I was the youngest around a room. I was the only female around a table. And I was the only foreigner or immigrant around the table too. And I think for me, that pivotal point of basically moving on from these labels came from when I realized that if I believe in myself and I don't see myself as different, then people's behavior starts to change as well. Certain mindsets and biases you can't change, right? And it's sad, and they do exist. As a female, I have experienced sexual harassment. Can I say that doesn't exist for men? No, I can't, right? But I have experienced it. As a young person, I have seen many times not being taken seriously. Does that mean if I were a little bit older and had the same idea that it would have been taken seriously? I don't know. But I think for me, it's when I stopped caring about the labels. Like, I don't call myself a young Middle Eastern female founder. I call myself a founder. And that's who I am. And anybody that wants to give me any advantages or disadvantages because of things that I didn't choose in my life, they're wrong. Like, I would leave it up to them. But for me, when it comes to any sort of compliments, any sort of confidence anyone has in me, anything that I get from anybody, I want it to be because of what I have done and what I've actively worked for, as opposed to things that I had no say in.
Great answer. But I do want to hone in on this a little bit, because you were involved with Flint, so you know where I'm going. We're trying to encourage young women in particular to develop their careers in technology and get into leadership. So is there any words of advice you would give to, Wahine around helping develop their careers?
Yeah, I think one thing I always say when I get invited to speak to a group of people, especially young women, is that I always tell them, you can't choose what you hear, but you can choose what you listen to. So choose that very carefully. And if you really believe in something, it doesn't matter what everybody else says. Just, put your heart and soul into it. And even if you fail to succeed, fail so many times and then all of a sudden that's fine. But don't give up. Don't give up too quickly, because you will fail, and you need to take that as a step forward, not a step backwards.
Cool, thank you. I suppose, that's general advice we could give anyone, really, but
Yeah.
certainly, particularly for women, that's important. Okay, look, I like to finish these conversations off with a couple of broader questions. We'll call you a digital leader because you are in the AI space. You are leading the way. We have the aim of New Zealand being one of the top 10 digital ready nations. What big ideas should our country be focusing on, do you think?
I think if there is anything I would ask anyone in New Zealand, government, entrepreneurs, investors, corporates, students, is take bigger risks. That is something that we don't see much here. Something that has, a lot of people start doing things that have worked in the past, certain investments, for example, like real estate, or things that have already been proven, like you want to bring them to New Zealand. That's great, but if you want to be a leader, do things that nobody else has done, even if that means there's a greater chance at failing. That's fine, but take that risk, take that leap of faith. And then everything else about New Zealand, I always say New Zealand has an unfair advantage compared to the rest of the world, because we are a smaller nation. That means, the adoption by, the entire country can happen a lot quicker. We are quite far from, certain regions of the world, so we have the chance to enjoy this peace and quiet as opposed to the noise, whether that is, unfortunate events like certain wars, whether that is, the level of competition, healthy or unhealthy, that's going on. These things create a lot of noise. We don't have that in New Zealand. So let's take advantage of that, and like really focus on some really big, great ideas in the world. And then bring AI here, start educating everybody, bring it to schools, start educating students about what this technology is, what it can do for the future, what it is doing to them right now. Start educating their parents, start educating the leadership teams of different companies and corporates. Start making some changes into the education industry, what is being taught in universities and how it's being taught. Start breaking some of those boundaries and you'll see magic happen.
What's your dream job? Or are you doing it already?
Oh, I love this question. I saw it was like, I do not dream of having a job.
That's a good one. Yeah, no job.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think what I'm doing, I love what I'm doing. I think for me, a dream scenario for life is something that continuously challenges you and helps you grow. I think for me, when I get to that again plateau stage where it's like very comfortable, where it's very safe, that's when I get uncomfortable and a little bit, on edge, and I'm like, okay, what am I doing with my life? But for me, it's being in an environment where it's constantly, and it is a high stress environment, don't get me wrong. It's not, I acknowledge it's not for everybody. But for me, it's good. It helps me grow, which I like.
Excellent, excellent. Is there anything else you want to add? Any comments you want to make before we finish up?
Um, no, no, I think we've covered everything unless there is anything that you wanted to kind of like dive into. But no, I mean, have a look at our websites, reach out if you have any questions.
Yeah, so where can
And
people
you have
find
some
you?
events coming up. LinkedIn. LinkedIn's the best way to get in touch, but also keep an eye on some upcoming events, both for Macso and Comfort, where we're going to talk about, specifics of the technology. You can learn something from it, and then you can take something from it and apply to your job or your projects.
Well, Saba, it's been a real pleasure and a privilege to spend time with you. Thank you for taking your time out. I know it's incredibly busy, and it's just wonderful to be able to talk to you again. And look, everybody who's listening in, you know that you can watch this on our YouTube channel. You can listen to it audio on just about every podcast platform. And look, hit the subscribe on either of those platforms so that you'll know when they come out. The Tech Bytes this year will be coming out at midday on Fridays. You'll get notification, and you'll be able to listen in. So. Thanks again, Saba, and I wish you a very successful 2024.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It was an honor. It was lovely to see you as well.